Well, today, hello, we're going to make one of these blocks. And these are important blocks, not least because you can great fun making three-dimensional shapes out of them or visual effects, but because it is a Y seam. Now, if you're doing paper piecing, hand sewing, Y seams are relatively easy to do because you have all your edges folded up around the paper, out of the way, and hexagons are all, when you sew hexagons together, it's all about the Y seam. But when you're hand sewing it and you're doing paper piecing where you fold the fabric over a paper form and then top stitch, you know exactly where you're stitching, you know exactly where your points are, exactly where to stop. It's not the same thing on a machine. It's a different kettle of fish altogether. So we're going to explore the Y seam using a machine instead. So if you have three types of fabric, I'm using all blues. I've got a dark, a medium, and a light, and with that we can make our three-dimensional tumbling blocks. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get diamonds, and the diamonds, as you saw, make up a hexagon. You can make your own diamond pattern and chop it out, or as long as they're 60-degree angles here and 120 here. Or you can make it using, and you can draw them out and cut them out with your diamond template, or you can do them using a blade. So I'm going to do them using a blade and show you can do it. Now, I've cut these to 3.5 inches wide each. You can just see that there. It's 1, 2, 3, 3.5. They're all 3.5 inches across. These, my diamonds are all 3.5 inches across, as you can see. So they're all, this will show up better. So they're all the same width across. So we've cut these strips, they're 3.5 inches wide, and now we're going to cut diamonds out of them. So we have our 60-degree line here, and we're going to use that, and we're going to cut. So I'm lining up my ruler on this. I've lined this up on the perpendicular. So I've lined some on the 30-degree, and I'm cutting a 60-degree off it, using the 60-degree line off it. So here we go. So that's our first cut, and as you can see, there we go. And now we're going to, on the same line, we can either move this up so that this is here and then cut another one, or the easiest thing to do is, in fact, once you have this angle cut, then you're going to cut 3.5 inches this way. So we're going to cut 3.5 inches from here to here. So I'm lining up 3.5 inches, if you can see that better, but so each of the parallel lines of our diamond, these parallel lines and these parallel lines, are 3.5 inches across, and this angle is 60 degrees. Okay, 60 degrees from the horizontal. So this is 30, 40. So this is 60-degree angle here, and this is 120. So that's how you cut your diamond. You get 3.5 inches or whatever width you want yours to do, and you cut your 60-degree angle using your mat, or your ruler will also have lines on it as well. They're hard to see, the lines. I'm not sure this is very helpful here, but yeah, just trust me, the ruler has lines, and when you get your own ruler, each ruler has lines in different places. So you can either use a ruler and a mat, and when you have your 60-degree thing, chopping point, then you cut 3.5 inches this way, 3.5 inches this way, and you have your diamond. So I think it's a matter of doing, because I'm not sure I'm explaining it particularly well. So I'm going to get this out of the way. So when you have your diamonds cut, what you can do, what is a good idea to start with when you're starting this, to get your eye in, is to draw if you're able to see, I have drawn a line all the way around. And what I've done is I have put down my piece, and then with my ruler, I have got the 1/4 inch. I've taken a 1/4 inch, and I am put the ruler down 1/4 inch in, and I draw a line. And then I turn it around, and I do a 1/4 inch in all the way around, and that is my sewing line. And what it also does is it gives you a point here at the top, at each corner where the 1/4 inch lines overlap. And they're very important because they are the points to which we sew. If you were doing this by hand, you would have your piece of paper in here, and you would turn over here, and you would turn over here, and there you would have your point. That would be the point you're sewing to. But we're not turning our edges in first. We're going to be sewing and then turning our edges up. Then turning our edges. Our edges are going to be folded one way or the other. So we need to know where we're starting and stopping. So while you're getting your eye in, it's not a bad idea to draw these lines on, and they're very, very helpful. So the next thing we do, that's what I'm looking for. So then we make sure that we sew them all in the right way as well, in the same way. Because if we sew them in different, if for example we sew them accidentally with the dark here and the medium here and the white here, then it wouldn't work, because tumbling blocks work because it gives the impression that light is coming from one direction and is hitting one side hard, is being completely lost on the other, and is kind of, there's some light coming onto the third. So in this one I have already sewn my medium fabrics here and my light fabrics here, like this. So I'm going to match these up exactly the same way, and I'm going to sew this seam. Now I'm going to line up my edges because all my pieces were cut the same. They should all be the same. And I'm going to sew from this intersection all the way to this intersection, and I'm going to stop. Now, in order to make sure that I have the exact point, I'm going to put this down underneath, and I am going to lower my needle into the intersect point before I put my foot down. When the needle is in, then I put my foot down. So I'm now going to sew to the point along the line. Now, so if you can see, I have sewn along the pencil line from point to point. Now we have this, and this is where the Y seam comes in. So we haven't sewn right to the edge, so we can move these bits out of the way. If we had sewn right to the edge, we would be stuck, because these bits would be stuck together and we wouldn't be able to move them. But we can, and this is important because this is where now we're going to, there's my bit with the line in it. So now we're going to insert this. So once again, this is kind of like the problem with the circle. How do we sew this onto this? So I'm going to, I was pressing this towards the light. I don't know why I pressed it in this direction, so I'm just going to finger press here. And be careful finger pressing, because some of these cuts, well, this one's okay, but some of these cuts will be on the bias. So you must be careful with the finger pressing. So some of these will be on the bias, actually. I don't know which. You have to check whether you're, so this is on the bias, I can see by the weft and the warp, and this one isn't. So anyway, you must be careful when you're pressing, because you don't know where your seam is on the bias. So now we're going to make sure that we don't sew it the wrong way around, because if we sew it the wrong way around, then we'll end up with that. So you know, if we do this, we're going to end up with that. So we need to make sure that our piece, put it in place, and then decide, I'm going to sew this seam or this one. I'm going to sew this seam, so I'm going to fold it over on this seam, right? That way it'll match. It helps if they actually overlap each other and there's no edges. That also is a good sign. So again, we've got our sewing line, so we're going to put this in. Same thing, we're going to carefully watching carefully, we're going to put our needle into the, there we go, and then put our foot down. And we're going to sew, and we are going to sew right to the point here again of where the crossing point is. But in order to do that and not get the pieces tangled up, we have to fold this out of the way. We have to clear our path to this point. So we're going to fold the other piece out of the way, and we're going to sew right to the point. And you'll be able to feel the point should be up against the fold of the fabric underneath. And as you're getting in, you can slow down and, you know, hand turn just to make sure that you're not sewing over bits. It's better to be safe than having to get out your seam ripper every 2 minutes. And occasionally I'll do a little back stitch because it's good to tighten, you know, make sure these stitches stay in place. So now we're here. We have this going on here, and this is going to fold this way. So we have this and this, and now we need to sew this seam. This one needs to be sewn together. So we're just going to fold the seam over on itself, and we're going to sew it down, and we're going to make sure, and we're going to get all this out of the way here. We need to fold this out of the way, get this clear so we can put these edges together. Okay, so we're folding this right out of the way here, and we're going to make sure that we have a clear path to this, my thumb out of the way, to this point here, which is right on top of this fold. So, and we'll do a little back stitch when we get in, because we don't want our center point opening. Some people like to sew from the outside in, some people like to sew from the inside out. Today I'm sewing from the inside out, outside in even. And if you want to do a back stitch at the beginning, you can do that too. Now, so there we go. Now we've done our Y seam, and that's pretty solid in the middle. That's fine, and we're going to press it this way, press it this way, press it in a nice little circle going around. Pick one direction, and you can open out the middle then. So you have this middle bit, the seam is kind of opened and it lies flat, and you have the other seams folded, and then you have this lovely block, and we can now add this in to our other blocks, and it will once again be a Y seam. Do I have it the right way around? I don't. You see, I had it turned. There we go. Now we got tumbling blocks. So again, we're going to lay it across the seam we want to sew, and we're going to get all the extraneous fabric out of the way. And as you sew more and more, you will end up with more and more pieces of fabric to get out of the way. And when you get into the middle, you end up with 6, because here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of them meeting in the middle here. So you need to kind of really just get in there and move the fabric and get it out of the way and find your clear sewing line and sew on that. So you cannot chain piece as well. That's the other thing to know about here. You cannot chain piece, because, and I'll tell you why we don't sew edge to edge. We know we don't sew edge to edge because we need to keep the edges clear for the Y seam, but you may be wondering, why don't we sew edge to edge around the outside of them? Because we're going to be sewing them together like this is one reason, and we are going to be sewing them into possibly a broader piece. We might be cutting part hexagons to fill in the background fabric and position these as a central tumbling block motif in a cushion or a bedspread or a bag. Alternately, you can fold in the edges and applique them on, but the easiest thing to do is to keep these edges open so that you have the freedom to either sew them, to actually sew your background fabric onto them like patchwork, or you then also have the freedom to choose to fold in the corners and applique them down. I'm just going to sew this last one to finish off our Y seam. So again, I'm going to get rid of all the extraneous fabric and get our two pieces lined up nice and flat, so we have a flat sewing surface, a clear, clean surface. The fabric is soft, it will move, get it out of the way. Ooh, where's my foot got fresh? My pedal. So, and again, we're going to position our needle first, then put down our foot. And if we want, we can do a little back stitch to hold it. And when we have left our needle down, we can then fold all these little bitties out of the way here and sew to the stitch line here. Now, so that is the Y seam. And when you give it a good press, it looks rather good. Our tumbling blocks. And I have several more of them here to put together. So that's an afternoon's work. So the main thing to remember is to, what should I look at? Anyway, there's going to be lots more. So you, where are my bits with the lines? You can draw your seam line, your sewing line in using your ruler. So you cut, whatever size you cut is going to be, you're going to come in 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So you can draw that line, and then you have your points from which and to which you sew, here to here. And you can do a little back stitch here and here to lock those seams in. Make sure when you're sewing more than one piece together, you get all the fabric out of the way that isn't in the seam, so you can have your seam line flat. And keep your colors in the right order so that you have your lovely 3D pattern. If you want to go for 3D pattern, you don't have to. You can do lots of other patterns, but whether you're doing a three-dimensional pattern or whether you're doing just a broad range of colors, that is the Y seam, and it's a very handy one to be able to do. So best of luck with it.